the way these events go.
Some people don't have access to Teams features. Okay. Maybe you can resolve that, Agni. Okay. Okay. Is everybody in yet? 41, creeping up. Hello, everybody. Just we are opening the gates and we'll be starting in a minute, just making sure everybody's logged on, if that's okay. Just to let you know, you're at the IBBC Tech Forum webinar, and I'm Ashley Goodall. I'll be hosting this today. So I think we have people from all over the place, from Iraq, from America, from the UK. So good news. Okay, I'm going to start. So welcome to the IBBC Tech Forum discussion. The difficult news is that the Google person cannot make it for personal reasons, but the great news is we do have Carl Niblock of Microsoft with us, and he's going to take us through a lot of what he's doing and what Microsoft are doing in terms of AI. The general subject today is AI now, i.e. AI is here. How's it going to affect your business? How will it affect your country? What are the threats and the opportunities? And, you know, we might discuss why politicians don't want to talk about AI. We're at the precipice of a number of elections in the UK, in France, in America. We just had them in India, had them in, and other places. So it's a very prescient time to talk about this. First of all, we're going to talk to Carl. And then in the second half, we'll be talking to two entrepreneurs who are working in Iraq in the startup ecology and economy. Nadeem Benchaf, who's an entrepreneur and investor who's based in Dubai, works for the Dana Fund, but also has land in Iraq and wants to apply her technology in agri-tech terms to Iraq. And the other one is Omar Al-Handal, who's managing director of Al-Haldai International Group, chairman of the Station Foundation in Baghdad, and also a general partner at Iraq Venture Partners. So the second half will be more about Iraq specifically, and the first half we'll be hearing from Carl. So without more ado, Carl, thank you so much for calling in. I know you're in Australia at the moment, and it's very late in the day, but I really appreciate you being on board. Carl is a cyber defense and ICS expert at Microsoft, and he has quite a sort of global role on this. So he knows a lot about what you need to do to be defensive, but equally so, he knows a lot about AI. So Carl, without more ado, would it be possible for you to just take us through a macro picture of AI in terms of what it is, what its purpose is, you know, who's using it, what kind of companies are using it? I'll just let you talk for the first bit and then I'll ask a few more questions. Thanks, Carl.
Sure, no worries. Thanks, Ashley. Yeah, so my name is Carl Niblock. I'm one of the lead cyber defense architects at Microsoft, and I work with a lot of our customers globally across Fortune 500 companies and global enterprise companies, as well as the public sector globally, and lead a lot of our work with our customers who are beginning to adopt AI services and trying to do so securely. And I think that's the main drumbeat that I would like to go forward with today, especially from a Microsoft perspective. A lot of people have been aware that Microsoft has been in the news with regard to security and refocusing to put security first, and that applies particularly to AI, and trying to encourage customers to engage early as they engage with artificial intelligence services and LLMs, large language models. They should do so securely, right? And that's what I want to come out of the gate with. That's why I, as a cyber defense expert, as a cybersecurity architect, and as an advisor to chief information security officers and chief information officers and chief technology officers, coming out of that stable of being a security-minded architect. Okay, so artificial intelligence has fundamentally begun to change the fabric of our world. It has been described by the Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella as being the new internet. It'll be as transformative to the world in the next number of decades as the introduction of the internet was a number of decades ago. And this is extremely important to recognize that the power of AI to bring about significant impact with regard to the economy, how we operate as human beings, how we interact with information, that changes from this point. And that's the clear message that I want to send on this call, and it's the clear message that we're giving to our customers that AI is here to stay. It will transform and change how we interact with the world around us. And there are two paths forward. There are companies, individuals, and governments that will engage with AI, and those that will not. And those that do will experience positive transformation, uh, and if they do so safely and with privacy and security in mind, they can positively impact the lives of the people in their country, the people in their uh, uh, company, their organizations, and also in just their personal and day-to-day lives. On the other hand, for those organizations that are being remiss or remit in adopting AI and AI services, we we run a very, very real risk of creating a, a technological uh, legacy or a technological dearth, right? A black hole where organizations, companies, and people who don't adopt AI services end up getting left behind. And that's what I'm trying to say sensitively, right? Uh, we are looking forward into the future as AI, artificial intelligence, and as we look forward toward what AI can do with management of data, insights on practice, um, the automation of processes. We are very excited about what potential it has to positively impact the lives of people. But we have to also be very careful about the impact that it has with regard to safety, security, privacy, um, the data that we're exposing to it. Because at the end of the day, I think there's somebody maybe off mute.
Dylan, could you mute yourself, please, somebody? Agni, whoever's on, could you mute them, please? Thank you.
Thanks.
Sorry, Carl.
No, so what it comes down to is that as we engage with these services, what AI really is the processing of enormous amounts of data. It is a trained model that hoovers in enormous amounts of data, trains itself to process that data in a more efficient way, learns and learns and learns from that data, and then has some kind of output. And that is a long way of saying it needs a lot of data. And we have, as a world, huge amounts of data being produced. The common saying is that data is the new oil, in the sense that this is what we're mining for, this is what we're generating, this is what we're looking for. As a society, we're producing enormous amounts of data with applications and services and technology that are it's just part of our day-to-day lives. Applications, in particular, on our mobile phones, and the services that we use, the websites that we look at, the services that we engage with through online services. These this all generates data, and we have a responsibility as producers of data to be wise about how that data is shared and the services, the AI services that it's exposed to and leveraged. But we produce data, and there's an opportunity for that data to be used and utilized by AI, either for good or potentially for bad. Now, we've seen enormous adoption of AI services across the past year. Um, it's everybody's probably been aware of services like ChatGPT from OpenAI, um, uh, which is a brand that Microsoft itself has invested heavily into and have become very much a partner organization with. And we are leveraging, Microsoft that is, are leveraging uh, the GPT 4.0 and the services produced by OpenAI in our own AI models, Azure AI and Microsoft Copilot and so on, to benefit the organizations, states, and people that we serve. Okay, but over the past year, we've seen a huge adoption across the enterprise space of AI services. Um, Now that could be low level, entry level adoption, or it could be very ambitious levels of adoption. And there's very much let's say, a dichotomy, or there's a spectrum of uptake on those services if we look across the globe. Some states and countries are fast adopters, others less so. Um, there has been a very strong willpower in the United States, for example, to adopt AI services and put it into the business and allow the business to benefit from that radical and rapid adoption of AI services. Same thing applies in India, where the vast majority of companies across the spectrum, large, small, medium, it doesn't matter. They're all looking at how they can adopt AI. Even internally in Microsoft, we like to think of ourselves as customer zero or patient zero when it comes to the adoption of AI. And we have seen even that global trend apply internally, where we know that more than 60% of our executives use AI services day to day. Um, and I mean at a depth, right? So that more than 60% of our executives have it as part of their daily lives and are accelerating their work. But if we look at a geographical level, we see that the adoption in India, for example, or in emerging geographies like Nigeria, um, South Africa, we see a huge appetite for the adoption of AI services and the insertion of those services into the business. Now, what that tells me is that there is an opportunity. There is opportunity that some countries are recognizing and other geographies are suppressing. We have seen hesitancy um, and some concern in the EU, particularly from United Kingdom uh, and Germany, where there's a level of hesitancy in the adoption of AI services. Famously in the news, Italy uh, blocked the usage of ChatGPT, for example, and that, from an economic perspective, from a global business perspective, is a little bit concerning because it creates an opportunity for some geographies to get ahead and others to be left behind. And I think that policymakers need to be very, very wise at this juncture in history. Actually, you mentioned a lot of elections happening. Even aside from geopolitics and local politics regionally, policymakers have to be very, very wise about how they either support or suppress the adoption of AI services, because it as I've said, in the past few minutes, it will be a game changer. It will be like the new internet. And if we were to rewind the clock and say, and look at the nations that were hesitant about the uptake of um, information superhighway, the adoption of the internet, and the leverage of the services on the internet, and we look at the countries that were slow to adopt mobile phone technology, some countries will get left behind. Some organizations will get left behind simply because policy um, hasn't kept pace with the drive of business and the desire of business to leverage AI services to transform how we all operate and process information.
Oh, absolutely fascinating. Just to frame it a little bit, in terms of corporates and SMEs, what is the sort of rate of adoption that people are using, and how much are they using it? And do you have any sense of the productivity gain that they're getting? For example, the FTSEs versus the SMEs.
So this is an interesting divergence, right? So pretty much every Fortune 500 company is adopting AI services somewhere in the business because they understand the inevitability of it. They understand what it is doing in terms of the market value of their organizations. But these are 500-pound gorillas that can't adopt any technology quickly well. But what we have seen, on the other hand, is our startups and small medium corporates that can move faster, move more agilely, have fewer processes, fewer bureaucratic hurdles, and often less regulatory oversight. And they can move faster with the adoption of AI services. So we have begun to see AI assisted small medium corporate businesses eating some of the lunch. I'm going to say that sensitively. They're eating some of the lunch of some of the larger corporate businesses because they have been able to start leapfrogging, start getting ahead of all of these other larger corporate enterprises that can't do that kind of technology adoption quickly. That's an incredible headwind for small medium corporates to grab hold of now. But it's also a concern of mine that small medium corporate businesses with, let's say, between 100 and 10,000 employees do not have they do not have the, let's say, the operational capacity to absorb not acting on it today. I hope that makes sense. So by being reticent or slow to adopt the technology with the opportunity that they have today, my personal concern is that they will find themselves eclipsed then by giant enterprises who are becoming increasingly assisted by AI.
So you're saying there's a window of opportunity for fleet of foot, smart organizations who can adopt these technologies now. It's a leveling down, effectively, a leveling up, if you like, a level playing field for those that are quick to use it, but with a proviso that they need to do it properly and safely. Otherwise, they may be potentially opening themselves to hacking and worse.
Absolutely, and that's my chief concern. And with my security hat on and my security and privacy hat on, there is very much an opportunity as well for these companies, these smaller, medium corporates, who have fundamentally less data, less complex services, more agile technology, to again adopt those services in an easier but also safer way. Um, if you can build in agility with your adoption of AI services alongside, uh, what's the best way to put it? Soundness or completeness in terms of our ability to protect the data that's being exposed to those services, with our review of the risk that those services would pose to the data inside our businesses. It is actually smaller businesses, medium corporates, that can adopt AI faster because they have fundamentally less data assets to manage. Although I recognize that they're doing so with often fewer people, multidisciplinary teams. They are, people wearing multiple hats. But nonetheless, there is an opportunity to dedicate people to that job, classifying data, making sure that data is protected, private, that the risk analysis has been done correctly. Then be an early adopter of that technology, and begin to start growing, growing on the basis of AI in the life cycle of the business.
And just thank you. And to give a sense of, is there any sense of what kind of productivity or profit upswing you might beginning to see with the AI? I noticed today, literally, that the American FTSE, whatever it is, the NASDAQ, the companies are deemed to be healthy because they're expecting higher profits from them, largely through AI efficiency. So that there must be a hope in the market that the efficiency and the generation and productivity will be beneficial to these companies. Do you have any sense of that as a scale at the moment?
So I'll caveat by saying one thing, that often the concern is that companies will grow and their operational efficiency and their operational profit would be better because they would be able to lay people off. That is something I'm constantly hearing a concern about, and I want to allay that. Um, Actually, we've spoken about this in the past, right? And the perception is that by the introduction of AI services, there will be less need for people to uh, do their jobs. What we're actually introducing is a massive stimulus of new skills that are needed to operate in a new economy. Again, with the analogy of the introduction of the internet, the concern might be that by introducing this new way for people to communicate and talk, we're not going to need newspapers, and therefore millions of people will lose their jobs. Well, actually, in reality, we introduced billions of opportunities and millions of jobs worldwide, and we shrunk the world. We allowed people to work from anywhere, and for anyone, right? So so we're actually introducing. Sorry again, I think there's a.
We have someone. Could we please mute someone? Thank you. Thank you.
So with that introduction of that injection of AI into business, we're actually seeing businesses grow, right? Not just because they're growing in revenue, but they're also growing in resource. They need new skills, they need new people, and they need to reskill people. Um, we have seen a net productivity increase in some cases of more than 20% just by the introduction of, for example, Microsoft Copilot. Now, I'm not going to be ignorant and ignore the other services from other companies. There are other vendors other than Microsoft, but obviously I'm speaking from a Microsoft perspective. But just with the introduction of something like
Abdullah Khan, please could you mute? Thank you.
just
Thank
with the
you.
introduction of AI services like Copilot, we have in some cases seen a net productivity increase of more than 20% immediately. With the ongoing adoption of that, the potential for productivity increase is exponentially more than that. And I'm not underestimating that. I'm not overestimating that. I'm not overstating it. The the gains from introducing AI into the life cycle of the business by automating certain processes, by changing how we do, for example, customer relations and how we do assisted services, how we put AI into the back end to make systems more efficient, more effective, and also more reliable in many cases. We're introducing new ways for people to engage with our businesses, new ways for people to engage with our state services. If I take a look at an example that we talked about, actually, the government of Singapore, the government of Singapore recognized immediately with the introduction of AI into the world as we live in it today. They recognized that they needed to be able to skill people quickly to not be left behind. So they introduced a program to educate their people and re-educate people who would be at most risk of potentially losing out to AI. So they took they took people over a certain age and are affording them an opportunity to reskill to adopt AI services and work as an AI focused worker. Prompt engineering and automation services engineering, uh, even how to leverage AI as a productivity worker in your day. Um, those things, those kinds of decisions at a government level are extremely important, and we are seeing a rise in Asia. We've discussed this as well, actually, where businesses in Asia, particularly across Southeast Asia, are being extremely agile in their adoption of AI services, and they're all already beginning to see the net positive increase and the net positive growth from that adoption. And they're doing so. I'm very glad about this. They're doing so with their safety hats on. They're saying, how can we adopt these services and do so correctly, safely, securely? How can we ensure that bad actors who by the way, are leveraging these services at a at a much higher adoption rate than even Fortune 500 companies are, how can we ensure that we're protecting our businesses from the worst of the worst while doing the best for our people and best for our citizens as well?
Really interesting. And so we're getting to the stage where there are challenges. On the one hand, those that don't adopt it, they're bifurcating into digital dark ages effectively versus the new productive companies. There are dangers of hacking, fakes, cyber disruption. You've talked about getting it right from the start and getting all the protections in place. Did you want to talk a little bit more about the what companies can do to protect themselves?
Yeah, so if people come from this call with anything, if they take anything from this call, let it be this one thing. Start figuring out how you can classify your data. We have seen a very concerning level of a lack of adoption of uh, rights management technologies and information management technologies that look at the data compliance. Um, a lot of companies simply aren't operating with a taxonomy of the classification of their data. So what is general in the business? What is public information? What is business sensitive information? And creating a classification internal in the business where you can say this is a confidential document. Just being able to quickly label a document and say that is confidential. Um, that is one of the key parts of the adoption of any AI technology. Not just because you want to ring fence what the AI has access to, but we're going to see an explosion of documentation, an explosion of information. Um, I've personally taken 120-page reports and asked Microsoft Copilot, put this into 5 slides for me. And that's made days and days of work, of human labor and work, and produced a document, beautiful PowerPoint in minutes. That's something I couldn't have done before, but I'm also exposing a lot of information. I'm uh, uh, also creating new documentation much faster. And my great concern is that we will end up creating a lot of sensitive documentation very quickly. On the other hand, we've also seen some public examples. I'm not going to name any companies or single out any companies, but um, early in the OpenAI story with ChatGPT, a certain large electronics manufacturer exposed sensitive business data to the model. And one of my concerns is that with alongside the adoption of some of these technologies, um, organizations aren't being uh, safe and secure about how the information that they allow to be shared with the model, and also not making there's a human level part of that operation as well, like an educational component of making sure people are aware what should and shouldn't be shared. The other part is to say there are some services that are public, and then there are other services that are built for work. And if you want your people to do the work securely, be sure that they are already trying to use AI services, right? Um, you want, as a business owner, as a policymaker, to be able to make sure that people are making the right decisions about which services they use for the right context. Are they putting public data in a public place? Are they putting work data in a public place? Microsoft Copilot, uh, a Copilot in the context of Microsoft 365 services is built for work, right? And there's Copilot on the web that's built for work. On the other hand, there are other services that are public, open, and because of the personal productivity gains, how much easier it's making people's lives, what we've seen is that a lot of people, if their organization isn't giving them AI tools, they're going and getting them anyway. And they're going and using public services that aren't protecting the information, that aren't providing a secure platform. Uh, if you're not providing a secure platform, they will find another platform to use anyway, right? So that's another big part of the security and privacy journey that companies have to figure out because people will do it. That whole shadow IT area, we're seeing people adopt shadow AI.
Really interesting. And of course, people use WhatsApp unofficially in government now, for example, as we found during COVID. Just as I say, just politically, I know you don't want to comment politically, but in the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to see AI as a really big impact on business and on life, on governments and the way we live. And we, you know, our government, we're getting a new government here on Friday, for example. And obviously, we'd encourage Rishi Sunak or Keir Starmer or whoever it is taking over to get on with this pretty soon. I'm sure they're aware. The UK is generally quite good on tech, but I'm interested that you've observed that we're starting to be hesitant where others are moving ahead. India, Nigeria, new players in the market that can make us look flat of foot. This could also be the case for Iraq and for any other countries listening in. So, a bit of advice from you to governments, perhaps, Carl?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same application as I just mentioned. People will find a way to use it regardless, and they can either do that with the right guidance, with the right policy in place, with intelligent regulation that recognizes the needs of business, um, or not. And what my concern is that governments, and I'm not going to, you appreciate, I'm not going to speak to any particular situation, but governments that do not early guide the businesses of their country and the people of their country to use these services safely, securely, and privately, and also to adopt them in the wisest possible way, they will either be left in a digital dark age, or there will be, let's say, consequences, malign consequences, bad consequences, as malicious actors take advantage of that lack of oversight, that lack of governance. My advice to policymakers is to be eager to satisfy the needs of business alongside satisfy the needs of security and privacy when it comes to people's data and the data of our organizations.
With that, Carl, it's a fantastic summary of what's going on, and I think a sobering analysis of what people need to consider, whether it's in Iraq or the UK or anywhere else for that matter. We're at a pivotal point where there are going to be winners and losers. This is a very Darwinian tool that will separate out the productive, those that adopt it, do it well, versus those that will be beleaguered and picked off, possibly by malicious actors as much as by other companies being more effective and more productive. So I think it is the question of our time, actually. But I haven't heard one politician mention it. Funnily enough, I don't know if you've heard any election information, but I've not heard any of our politicians discuss this one issue.
I'll not comment too deeply, but we've obviously had some quite public debates between world leaders and potential world leaders, particularly the United States and the UK of recent days. And I would have expected it to be a massively hot topic because it will change our world forever. I don't want to comment, but
Yeah.
I will say the one thing I will say is it would be foolish of our leaders globally across every nation, every state. It would be foolish of our leaders not to engage now with something that people want to understand, people want to use, and something that will change business forever.
Okay. And finally, Carl, if people want to look into adopting this, what you're suggesting, these standards, these regulations, should they get to their local, where do they go? Do they go to Microsoft Pilot? Do they go to their local Microsoft office? How would they approach this and get some help from you?
So there are layers to this, right? So what I would first advise is to simply, if you're operating a business, engage with the any kind of Microsoft uh, representative you currently have, like your customer success account manager, or engage with a Microsoft partner that you're currently consuming services with. If you're not a Microsoft customer today, um, I would simply encourage that you uh, uh, use Bing. Not there are other services, but my you cut me and I'll bleed Microsoft. Use Bing.com and simply ask Copilot, which is built into Bing, where can I go to find out more about Microsoft AI services or Google AI services or Amazon AI services and so on. Leverage the information that's there. In the meantime, I'll also drop a few links into the chat that will help and guide a few across a few different areas. Um, and I hope those help steer folks in the right direction. But hopefully, if you've got a Microsoft account representative of any kind, do reach out to them, engage with them, and they can guide you in the journey.
Thank you very much indeed, Carl. Thank you. Really interesting, and I'm sure a lot of people will take this to heart. I might now move on to our second part of the thing. So feel free to get some sleep now, Carl. As I know you're in late night, or sit
Thank you
along
very.
with us if you like. And I'd like to now invite Nadine Ben Chaffee and Omar Al Handal to come online. Hello, Omar. Are you there? Okay. Yeah, thanks. Can we hear? All unmuted. Okay, so
Yes.
that's a very different conversation about AI, but actually fascinating. And if it's all right, I'd just like to say that Nadine she's got some land in Iraq, which she wants to, I think, in the future, do a lot of pilots on agri-tech, because at the moment you're working in the UAE as an investor and entrepreneur with the Dana Fund. And I also think you have your own fund come out called Dune Development Fund, which will be hopefully investing in agri-tech in your land in Iraq. Also, Omar, hello Omar, is the managing director of Al Handal International Group and chairman of the station, which many of you will know in Baghdad. And he's also a general partner at the Iraq Venture Partners. So welcome to you both. We're getting a bit more granular talking about Iraq in more particular, but actually I think the things going on around it in terms of investment coming into Iraq. So Nadine, if I could just start with you, maybe you could tell us a little about what you do and the kind of work you're working on, and I alluded to just now. So over to you, if that's all right.
Yes, thank you. Thanks so much, Ashley. So I'm Nadine Ben Chaffee, Iraqi, British, living in Dubai for the last 16 years or so. Background really FMCG through the likes of what was Kraft Foods, Nestle, Yoplait, and then moved into hospitality. And then after that, having exited a couple of companies back in 2021 in hospitality, also got thrown a little bit at the deep end when my father passed away, unfortunately, where I had to kind of learn pretty fast the management and about our farm in Iraq, in Diwaniyah. So that was kind of a baptism of fire almost of figuring out what to do, so visiting the farm. And so that's how I kind of got a lot more involved into the agriculture space. I was already investing in some food tech startups and one agri-tech startup in particular. But this kind of was really like a learning curve of trying to understand. And that's also how I met the Dana group. So trying to learn more about so at Dana, I'm the director of their venture builder. We work with women-led startups in desert technologies being 40% of climate. That's anything from water tech, agri-tech, regenerative farming, through to some renewables and food tech. And so in terms of land in Iraq, I mean, the biggest challenges we know in Iraq is climate change and the challenges of the lack of water. That's really kind of been one big area. The fact that the land is getting saltier, so that's a degradation of the land, and just trying to make changes, even if it's tiny changes, in a sector that is very difficult to change. farmers, wherever they are in the world, but including Iraq, but they are really difficult to get them to do any changes kind of whatsoever.
Nadine, at Dana, you have, I think, a number of different companies. How does the investment work? I think you pilot in different places, you have different kinds of companies, and how does that then proceed?
So the way Dana works is we have a pilot site or a beta site, as we call it, in Masdar City, so which is the home of kind of everything renewable in Abu Dhabi. We are working on another pilot site in Agadir in Morocco. And then the other part, so that's one arm, is allowing these agri-tech to pilot, to be able to demonstrate that their product works, test it, have the right data. On the flip side, then it's about corporate partnerships. So how can we fast track some of these startups to actually getting some revenue? So beyond piloting with us, they actually then have to pilot with some of the corporate partners. So such as Silal, which is one in Abu Dhabi. On the food tech side, we have Acthia. We're talking to Ferrero on some of the food tech, Mitsui, some of the bigger, who kind of give us the wish list of innovation, so to speak. And then we kind of try to match with some of the new IP and the tech that we see coming out on the startup side, and seeing how we can do it faster. Because unfortunately, we're also in a sector that it's not as exciting and fast as fintech. So it doesn't get the funding that those sectors do, because it's just a really slow burning kind of, ecosystem. And so we try to bridge that lack of funding, so to speak, and a little bit, and that gap. And then obviously the women-led element, again, is, you probably heard it 1,000 times, whether it's in the West or anywhere, women get 1% of the funding. So again, we're trying to push that further so we can at least try to make a little bit of a dent in making that more accessible.
So it's reducing the risk by integrating them in bigger supply chains and working with big mental companies, for example. How far have you got? Have you got some workable solutions at the moment? I know they may be in pilot, but where along the path have they got to?
Yeah, so all of them. So we've got quite a few. We've got quite a few that have graduated kind of from piloting with us, and that are now piloting. So typically, before we give them to a corporate, we will have checked and piloted them somewhere before. So we've got quite a few that are in the process of being piloted. Some where they're ready to sign kind of distribution or commercial contracts. So those at least are, So there is like some slow, success stories coming up, but it takes time. Because obviously, we have an agricultural, so if you're doing anything, it's a cycle, right? And if it's a seasonal cycle, so you then do it, you get the results. And then corporates don't work fast. It's the other side of reality. So we have to manage the expectations of the startups on the corporate side.
When do you foresee starting work in Iraq? Is that when you've proven the concepts, or are you beginning to test out already?
No, look, I mean, to be honest, in Iraq, I'm more than happy. I mean, even in our land, I'm more than happy to do a pilot site tomorrow if I could. It's just managing the physical land itself is not so much the challenge. It's any regulatory around piloting that you kind of then need to manage, because at the end of the day, where our land is, we only do wheat and rice. If we're not allowed to grow rice, which we hadn't been for the last 2 years, then it's impossible to do any other pilot, because all the animals, effectively all the birds, come to your small pilot site. And so you actually can't run an effective pilot at all. So those are just like practical challenges that trying to, make sure so we can get an approval. They'll say, yes, you're approved to do it. But actually, if you're doing it by itself, it just doesn't work. So you have to balance how you can do it. But yeah, we would love to. I mean, we have a company that's ready to do trial drip irrigation for rice. Rice, for example, when we do it, we flood the land for 4 or 5 months, 24/7, which is, sounds really normal, but in Iraq, it's, considering we have no water, it's actually a little bit crazy. But we do it because it's tradition, and we have also we have amber rice, which is obviously very unique to us. So at the same time, how do you use new technology to try to maintain some of these heritage kind of cultural elements that are unique to us? and being real and understanding that, there are about 250 farmers on our site and their respective families. And so we need to manage and do it even for their sake, if for anything else. So that's kind of really been kind of the constant challenges. There is new tech available, be it biofertilizers, trying to also just getting them to trial new crops is a huge challenge, because they will only grow what the government buys. The government obviously gives them a preferential rate, so they don't want to try anything else. And then if they're not allowed to do something, they get compensation. So we've got to kind of think about the way, how do you address it so that it's a win-win? So the farmer doesn't feel it's a win for the farmer, and it's a win for the government. Because actually what we're trying to say is we don't need the compensation if we can find them other solutions and other crops. And once you do other crops, there are other processing chains that you can build on top. So just as, so if you do sesame, how do you then do the processing? You can then employ more women on the back end side into other crops. So these are the kind of the thinking that you have to kind of start right from the beginning and build up.
Just a quick question about regulation. I mean, are you prohibited from doing certain things, or what would make your life easier in terms of trials and new products?
So for example, if they put a ban on growing rice, which they did, which not this year, but last year, then effectively they actually will not allow you to switch the water on at all. So you then have to have special permission, even if you're going to grow anything else. They effectively would fine you if you so much as switch a pump on somewhere. So those are, so that's one. You can go and get, again, like I explained before, you can go and get the permission. So they'll give you the permission then to do your testing. But in absence of everything else, it's a real challenge to do. So what we almost need is government to help, or other, to help fund these pilots during season. So you're effectively underwriting any risks that the farmers are taking, to show them, look how well a biofertilizer works better than these chemical fertilizers. Look at how you can improve by intercropping alongside in terms of your farming. So start looking more a little bit at regenerative. How do you reduce the soil? Doing regular soil testing. We have soil sensors that can give you the live data of salt, readings, etc. So you can monitor all the time. Investing in, so the other thing is, so water effectively is considered a subsidy that's given to us in Iraq for free. In the UAE, you pay for water. So when you save the water, that is a cost that you feel and you see. So if I say, hey, I'm going to put drip irrigation and that's going to reduce my water by 70%, they can offset that capex pretty fast with the OPEX in terms of running that farm. In Iraq, they don't see that. So they just see the capex and say, well, why? Why would I invest? And no, it's a headache. So even if the government almost wants to do it for free for them, each farm is unique. Each farm has its different layout, will need to be thought of differently. So doing a one approach fits all won't work. But even then, how do you convince them to, so I know they tried to, I think they got every landowner to sign that they will mandatorily kind of take in irrigation, put in irrigation units, but we just don't really see it happening. And so I think until, there's some sort of a carrot and a stick almost to try to really make you think about water and as a cost.
Okay, thank you. Different minds, yeah.
Yeah, that's one area. And then the other area where they can save costs is obviously fertilizers. So the minute you use irrigation systems, you can reduce the amount of fertilizers that you're using. Again, a huge cost. Since the Ukraine war, those prices have skyrocketed. So again, that's another area that will help quite a bit.
Okay, Nadine, thank you. That's a really interesting explanation of what you're doing and possibly some of the barriers. And now if we can go to Omar. Hello, Omar. Thank you for waiting. And again, I think we've got some very interesting. If you could maybe just tell us a little bit about what's happening in the eco startup area and how healthy it is, and then maybe we can talk about what will make it more healthy and what kind of barriers we would like to remove. And then maybe Nadine might come in on that as well. So with some perspective from UAE. So Omar, over to you.
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you for having me. And hello, everyone. Well, to start, I think the context of the Iraqi ecosystem, and to give a background, I think this goes back to around 2013. It all started from technology communities on social media, and then it was developed and supported by development agencies, initiatives of hackathons, and then we have seen the establishment of the Station Foundation for Entrepreneurship, the first co-working space in 2018 that was specialized in capacity building, empowerment, and the other players in the ecosystem. I think where we are, the Iraqi ecosystem is on a verge of an exciting and transformative stage. The ecosystem, it's still nascent to early growth stage. We have seen a significant increase in the entrepreneurial theme, seen activity over the past few years, driven by the young population. As we all know, Iraq got a median age of 25, and we are the fourth largest country by in the MENA region in terms of population, tech savvy and innovative. So we got startups in e-commerce, food delivery, last mile delivery. We have seen successful local acquisitions from bigger companies in the ecosystem. We recently have seen successful fundraising that was anchored by Euphrates and the participation of the Iraq Venture Partners in securing a Series A in a capital raise that was undisclosed of seven-figure investment.
So, I mean, can you say that it's basically increasing at what is it, 20% a year kind of investment level? What's the sort of sense of that? And do you have any sense of the quantification of what kind of money is going into startups? Is it becoming mainstreaming effectively?
We're seeing a rise in the investment mainstream, and I don't have a number to quantify this, but I mean, as I mentioned earlier, in respect of where we are, we have seen a positive trajectory in respect of the startups that got fundraising from local angel investors, from high net worth, and now we have seen a successful fundraising that came from outside Iraq. So yes, there is a positive trajectory towards the investment towards the startups.
Now, the interesting thing is about the overseas investment, and where would they be coming from? Are they just Iraqi diaspora, or is it, say, Abu Dhabi or Qatar? Where's the investment starting to come from?
It is from the GCC in particular, so from a regional perspective. I mean, we should take in considerations the barrier of the growth of the startups in Iraq. I mean, as we all know, one of the I would say main obstacle is the fundraising. So people would tend to start their startup or micro or SMEs from personal savings and loans from family and friends, which consist of almost 70% of the equity to start. And I think one of the other challenges that we do have that we have seen is the limited infrastructure of the banks in Iraq. You got an almost 22% of the population which is banked, which makes it a challenge in respect of the financial conclusion per se.
Yeah. The other thing that I think we spoke about before was the ownership structure of Iraqi companies, how there's a 49-51% ownership, and the implication of that. Would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I mean, this goes to the legal obstacle of operating a business. I mean, with the complex of legal systems that we have, it's outdated. It takes almost 2 to 3 months on average to start business activity in Iraq. As we discussed before this call, the limited the limited foreign ownership, which is the 49-51%, which makes it as well a hard to attain dream for a successful acquisition from outside, from an FDI perspective, or from sovereign funds, or whoever would be interested in the ecosystem in general. That 49-51, that's a barrier that we've been talking about and trying to see how to overcome it in the past conversations.
So as an overseas investor, you can't actually outright own the company. That's a drawback. And then secondly, to start it up can take you 67 days or so just to have a company. So I mean, I'm not sure why that would take so long, but that does. The just from an overseas perspective, I mean, Nadeem, you are in the UAE. What do they do there to encourage investment in tech, which has absolutely taken off in a very rapid fashion?
So I think we had like a few points. So the minute I think the 100% ownership law came in, coupled with, I would say, quite a lot of accelerators purely there to incubate and help, I think that just, saw it, take off on a different level. So I think because look, in a startup, there's high risk as it is on a good day, on the best day. And so the last thing you want is another legal risk, which you have there. So, we were looking at investing in one company in Iraq, and honestly, the VC, ended up having an hour's call just on the structure because of this 51-49. And eventually, it was just too risky and the cost of a nominee was just too high. So that's kind of definitely, I think, one key area. The other side is also just that paperwork. So being able to open a company online in a day, and through the different free zones. So having the different free zone structures, at least, that understand and might have a support and a network that helps that ecosystem, let's say whether it's in media or DIFC or whatever for banking, or Abu Dhabi in terms of ADGM. So whichever sector it is, I think having those ecosystems and then having that really fast, they took they did an assessment, they took external advice. The external advice was, you go to the US or the UK, it's $200 typically to set up, and you need to do it within 24, 48 hours. And so they took that fully on board and did it, right? So if that's something, but it needs that entire infrastructure behind it, because it's all about being able to check people and their ID and be able to do all of that and do it quite well, and being able to now open a bank. It used to be painful to open a bank account in the UAE. Now again, with WEO Online, you can probably open it again in 48 hours, which was also unheard of before. So these things definitely make a big, a huge difference, and suddenly you'll see it really take off.
So Nadine, you're absolutely right. You should just be able to log on and form a company. And presumably these days through AI and other checks, you should be able to do that fairly easily. The free zones is a separate subject. I mean, that you're talking about. Tell me a bit more about free zones and how they work as opposed to non-free zones.
Yeah, so the UAE, I mean, the first part of 100% ownership was based on the free zones. So they had DIFC. Obviously, Jebel Ali was the first one for re-exports. And then you had DIFC being the financial center. Then you have Media City on the media side, Internet City. You've got a science, a bioscience park. You've got just about every sector has now its own kind of special free zone, and then Abu Dhabi did its kind of own version in its own way. And so at least then what you create is an ecosystem. So then what they try to do, each free zone has its own kind of accelerators, and tries to create an ecosystem of mentoring and help and, co-working spaces and licenses and different kind of incentives to try to, foster that sector. Some of it comes with funding, some of it doesn't, but that's effectively kind of, Hub 71 obviously is a huge one. They brought in Techstars. So they bring in, what I love here is that they bring in the international players who know how to do it, who have done it in the US and elsewhere. They bring them in, they learn, they pay a hell of a lot of money, but to see it, set up, so they learn, they get that infrastructure set up, and then they can run it themselves afterwards. But yeah, we're not recreating the wheel here. It's been done before. It's just a question of mimicking, and Saudi is doing exactly the same now.
Yeah. So everyone else is doing it. So Iraq really needs to kind of work out it's got to do this or not do it. The other yeah. So are these by universities by any chance? I mean, is there university proximity to some of these?
Some have universities backing. So you'll have Khalifa University in some projects. Sharjah Technology Institute Park will have some universities backing it. NYU has its startup AD working. So yeah, where it makes sense. There's definitely, and I work a lot with, obviously I did my MBA at London Business School, so we have an angel investor network, and we're working with quite a lot of these kind of accelerators. So yeah, for sure.
The other thing is that I think you mentioned English law, which I think UAE has established. Is that right?
Yeah, so ADGM works. ADGM in particular, I think DIFC when it started I think they said something like 98% British law. I think ADGM is 100% British law.
Can you just explain what ADGM is? Just for the ignorant
global markets. So it's the equivalent of it's the financial center, but for Abu Dhabi. So it's where their stock market is based.
Yeah.
And a lot of funds have left. So a lot of, we keep talking about the UK exodus at the moment of high net worth, but I know a lot of companies are literally unloading, onboarding right onto ADGM in their droves right now. So that's the rule of the law. So obviously there's no point in having a free zone and then you don't trust the law and the court. So if there is a dispute, if there's arbitration, what are the rules that are going to be used to follow that? Who are the adjudicators? Who's going to manage that process? And so I think, ADGM tried to bypass they said, look, the easiest way is if everybody's comfortable with British law, we have a lot of these expat lawyers here. Let's just, if that's what gives comfort to the ecosystem, then that's the best way to go.
So just to recap, I mean, for example, if Iraq wanted to fast track, investment, number one, have a free zone, maybe make it a university or something like that. Number two, it's all about reducing risk, so make it quick to put up companies. Number three, revisit possibly within the free zone only for startups, for example, ownership structures to make it more amenable to overseas people. And fourthly, possibly use English law. So those are probably the key things that would make Iraq attractive to investors. Would that, Omar, how would that work for you?
Well, I think, as the theory of investment, and as we all know, the main I would say obstacle that we have on the local law, which is the investor protection. So from a regulator perspective, how can we enhance such a thing? How can we give confidence in the Iraqi ecosystem from an FDI perspective. I mean, the concept of investing in emerging market as in Iraq, in the Iraqi startup, it's still new and still nascent. As Nadine mentioned, and the free zones in the UAE, they got, I think, plus 50 free zones. That it's an investment-friendly, tax-free, so it is a magnet of getting investments into the country where we are. I think there is a lot of, reforms from a regulator that should be streamlined, and simplifying such frameworks is essential. So improving, as I said, the access to capital from an outsider that would give, again, the ease and the confidence that the structure that I am investing in is protected, and I could get my investment, get my money easily if the objective of it to put it in and out in any investment or any sector.
So really reducing the risk for investors, which is the key thing. There's obviously no shortage of talent in Iraq. We know we have talented people, as talented as anywhere else. Some of them are outside the country, some of them are in the country. And of course, there are a lot of Iraqis, a lot of young Iraqis. So with a very strong penetration of mobile phones, for example. So I don't see any reason why Iraqis shouldn't be as, if not better, at entrepreneurship and new startups than anybody else. It's just the system needs to enable that to happen. Is that a reasonable analysis?
Agreed. So, yeah. I mean, we partnered with the IFC on a program called Scale Iraq. It is an investment readiness program which gives technical assistance in respect of improvising the investment thesis in order to help startups to get investments from within the ecosystem and from the regional perspective. As you rightly said, we don't see that talent would be an obstacle, yet one of the key aspects that I would emphasize on is education and skill development. So there is a gap in respect of, the education back home in Iraq, which can be addressed in the programs that been provided by the incubator accelerator programs. As I mentioned earlier, within the station, the Capital Business Hub that gives such programs, which enabled the startup, the SME in their journey.
Thank you very much, Omar. And Nadine, is there anything you'd like to just add? I'm going to probably finish soon. I just noticed that Parika Hanley, who runs IBN, says, why, instead of free zones, why not apply those liberal rules everywhere in the country? Why not?
Yeah, I think free zones are you do it in a smaller setting. You pick a specific sector and you try to get it right, I think. And you learn and you see what works, what doesn't work. I mean, even in the UAE, it's not 100% ownership on every single sector. There are some sectors that are still, heavily regulated and don't allow. So I think it's important to, I don't think you need to go all out at once, but at least make a start. And I think that 100% and the tax-free, certainly, even though we won't really be tax-free here for very long, with corporate tax kicking in, even really with the free zones, it's a matter of time. So but at least it's a good way. It's a good way to get started. And the mentality in terms of, look, yes, I think training is a long way. I think Iraqis have, like a lot of the ones, we are very entrepreneurial, but we have a habit of thinking we just like to do everything. So it's kind of like, I have my day job in government, but I can own a shawarma shop on the side, and I can still do this other business on the side. And that mentality from investors, it's like you do something and you need to be dedicated, and it's 100% and you're full time. This is something that I think they'll learn, right? It's as you find the right opportunity, and it's really that, that's something that I think will get ingrained over time as as training kicks in more.
Yeah. Well, look, both, thank you so much, Nadine Benjath and Omar Al-Hamdel. Really appreciate your insights here. This will be available for all of those who want to watch it again many times on our website. I also want to thank Carl Niblock from Microsoft, who gave us a masterclass in AI. He's also left in the chat for Microsoft resources that will help your journey. So do take advantage of that. Have a look at it, make a record, etc. And someone else, William Holden's also put something about Singapore as well. So there's some references going on here. I'm really grateful to all of you for such an interesting conversation, and I think pivotal to the way we're going to live our lives in the next 5 years in Iraq and globally. So very important. Think about when you're voting, if in Britain, who's more likely to be embracing technology of the parties. I think that's the key question. Some people like jumping into fairgrounds. Some people are very steady. Some people might have some tech in their background. So that's an interesting observation. So we'll see where that goes. Thank you all very much. And thank you everybody for listening. We've had a good audience, and this is the beginning of our conference, which is at the Mansion House. Tonight we have a reception for those that have signed up, and also tomorrow a very full day with fantastic speakers and really solid issues. However, I kind of think we're just ahead of the curve here in tech. So thank you all very much, and great to see you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.